is Alpha Run of Chariot. I'm Tara, and I'm still out of game here talking to you like the semi-normal person that I am. And we are running Chariot LARP Alpha today, which is our alpha test of Chariot LARP, a digital immersive sci-fi experience. We are doing live-action role-playing games, totally online, and I'm really excited to be doing this adventure. We've done some character creation with this awesome crew we have assembled here. My volunteers are helping me test this game, and we've done some workshopping, and I've been creating a lot of documentation about player safety, emotional safety, how to use Discord, which is the tool we're using to communicate here. And it's just really fascinating. So I've been learning a lot about it. It's definitely like something we're building collaboratively as we go. And we actually took a nice amount of time to go over some details about the game and what kind of information we want to put out there. I do want to say before we get started, I know the sound, I'm like constantly having sound issues here, so I'm totally aware. I get it. It's a struggle with having the equipment that I do, but fortunately in the future we're going to have a nice little solution to that. So thanks for bearing with the sound issues. Do feel free to watch. We are going to enter our live action role playing game soon, which means once we're in character. You might see us do a couple of brief things like, out of character. This is a symbol for it. But most of the communication between myself and the players is going to take place over Discord. So you guys aren't even going to see it. You're just going to see us in game, maybe slightly distracted as we're typing to each other. But for the most part, we're going to be in game talking to each other. And probably, just a hint, having some heated conversations about our mission in this game and the direction that our different characters want to take it in. So tonight is the first session of Chariot, and some of our characters may have ties to each other in our backstories, but for the most part, this is the first time we're all meeting each other in game, and our characters, just like us, the players, we're meeting on video conference, just as you see it. So there's no like narrated roleplay here. What you see is what you get. And that's kind of at the core of the design for this game. And one reason I chose sci-fi as a genre for this game, because, it really lends itself well to that kind of experience of characters who can talk to each other over video conference. So that's the idea, and it is a sci-fi setting. We are on Earth. We're about to leave, and there are a lot more details to it, but you're going to find out all of those in-game because we will have some news announcements in-game, and there will be a mission briefing that I'm going to deliver as well. So another thing about me and my role in this game before we begin, I am the game designer, and I am GMing this game, but I'm really playing what I like to call a scripted PC, which isn't exactly the same as an NPC. I do have specific objectives that I must complete. They're not optional, they're mandatory objectives to keep the flow of the game rolling. But overall, like, my character is going to have snap decisions, judgments, feelings, and just things that I do on the fly just as much as any other player. And that's really important to me as a designer, to make sure that the scripted PCs have agency, or even if I throw people in as NPCs specifically that are just there to complete objectives, that they still have some amount of agency. So that's why I refer to what I'm doing as a scripted PC role. So again, thank you for joining us. I know the sound quality is going to be a little rough, but thanks for bearing with us. And we're about ready to get rolling. We're going to go in game. I know it's going to be hard to hear. Go ahead and turn the volume up. And we're going to get started right now. So before we begin, any other questions besides safety rules questions? Because I am going to go over the safety components one more time. All right, I think we covered everything out of game. So one last thing before we begin, we do have some emotional safety components going on, and physical safety as well. We are role-playing from the comfort of our homes here, our respective homes. Real life comes before LARP life. So yeah, if anything, really intense happens, if your house gets like set on fire, something like that, like hopefully nothing bad will happen. That comes first. So please definitely like pay attention to your surroundings and take care of what you need to take care of. That brings us to our first emotional safety component. We use different symbols to communicate. One of them that you might see us use is called the look down, which is like this. And that visual cue means that you're just allowed to let that person do what they need to do. They'll probably get up and leave, and you're not supposed to draw attention to it. It's happening out of game. It's a little harder to communicate over Google Hangouts like we are with that specific thing. But, please just respect that rule as best you can. And keep in mind that us as players, we're communicating over Discord and chat. So that's kind of what's happening there. So before we begin, Big Mark D, thank you so much for the bits. I appreciate that. Everything contributed to this stream goes into developing more games. And one of the reasons I'm able to keep the cost of the game itself relatively low is due to contributions like you. As the stream grows, we go ahead and generate more revenue, and that supports the game development and subsidizes those tickets for the players. So that's a really big part of how I'm able to do this at an affordable level. So without further ado, I am going to begin. We're going to go in-game. Again, apologies for the sound. It's going to be pretty low tonight, but we're going to rough through it until we get some other solutions going. And thank you so much for watching. All right, and do keep in mind that I won't be able to interact with you in-game while I'm in-game, but I may respond to you in the chat. So if you're a viewer, keep your eye on the chat, and you might get a response from me there. So one of my mods is about to head to work, so I'll still be keeping an eye on chat and getting rid of any troublemakers. Mark, you are not a troublemaker. Yes, for Redguard, Narnia, and Aslan, yeah. Okay, so, all right, without further ado, we're going to go in game, and you're going to see a little shift in who I am, so I'm going to get all my smiles out, and we're going to begin. All right. 3, 2, 1, in game. Welcome. I see I've assembled quite a crew here. Yes, I hear you. I see you.
Okay.
I'm Captain Emily O'Sullivan, and I'm going to be the captain on this journey. I see I have quite a crew assembled. One of you I know pretty well. Go ahead.
How are you, Emily?
I'm alright. It's been a rough day. I've got some news, actually, and even before we start with these introductions, I'm gonna read the news, and I want to see how you react to the news, because I want to know what all the passengers on my ship are made of. So I'm gonna read to you our news announcement for today.
I think that's the best course of action to take right now, Captain. It doesn't seem like it would be beneficial to the whole crew to have this news before we even introduce ourselves.
Well, I'm the captain, and that's what I'm deciding to do. So we're going to have this piece of news, and I'm going to see how you react to this, and then we're going to do introductions.
If you feel that's best.
News item. Nuclear war by the numbers. This is written by Rosella Mioga, the correspondent for the Aggregated International Press Corps. The World News Network has released a report with data collected by the nonpartisan global group GSG, Global Statistics Group. In the wake of the most recent global instability, 36.7% of Earth's previously habitable land regions are no longer able to sustain life due to the prevalence of nuclear fallout and environmental devastation. The WNN revealed this news following the collapse of the International Research Station on Antarctica. The station collapsed last week following an unprecedented fissure in the ice, threatening to split the remaining ice mass of Antarctica in two. The global fish shortage remains a concern as a result of not only increasing water temperatures, but also the amount of nuclear devastation that has affected oceans and aquatic inhabitants. Starvation is imminent in coastal cities, particularly in the remaining third world countries. And I'm sure we're all affected by this news. But now that it's read, now that I see how you're composing yourselves here, reacting to it, maybe now we can go ahead and have our introductions. Oh, Provisional President. I'm sure you would love to start. Let's start with you.
Of course. Well, as you so graciously introduced me, Captain, Provisional President, my name is Rena Martez. Now, I'm sure most of you have wonderful reasons for being here, but I feel that it's definitely in our best interest to just move forward and make sure that humanity itself continues to survive, and our mission is fairly important to do so. That's all I have to say for right now.
Well, thank you for that formal introduction. Who would like to go next?
I'll go.
All right.
Okay, my name is Adria Allen. I am a master librarian, and I will be serving as the chief archivist and librarian aboard ship. I am here in a capacity of helping to plan the transition, as well as to start to have input from people into what we think is important to preserve on the ship, both in terms of memorabilia or memories of Earth, and in terms of skills and cultures.
Excellent. Thank you for your introduction. Next.
I'll go. Colonel Gunnar Preston here. I'll be your pilot for this journey, at least the start of it. I'm actually calling in right now from one of the most exclusive hotels on Earth. I'm at the base of the Great American Space Elevator over here in Pearl Harbor. Stuck in the barracks, but I found a room in the basement that I think will work well for this. And yeah, pleasure to meet all y'all.
Glad you're able to stay safe. And we have one remaining member. Turn it over to her.
Hello. I'm sorry, the news has affected me deeply. I am Francesca Amelia Estrada Branson. I am well known as a polymath, one who uses many venues, many ways to solve a problem, to express a problem, to communicate. I am primarily a creative polymath, using expressions in literature and poetry and dance and music and art and photography to express a point of view.
What are you going to be doing on the ship?
I am one of your chroniclers, and I will be helping people to express their own points of view, their own issues with what's happening on Earth, what's happening to us, what's happening in the future. And as a renowned person of peace, I have received the equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize from many countries. And I hope to be able to minimize the discord on our ship and help people to get along, express themselves, but work well together.
Excellent. I feel like that kind of...
You can start there.
Well, I suppose should talk about our mission and our reason for this venture. And then I'd like to hear from you, all of you, about why we've been selected, or why you think we've been selected. So, sorry to start everything off with that kind of news, but it underscores the urgency of our mission. So we are a small group. We are a group of 233 in total, but of course just a few of us represented here. And it is our responsibility to get the chariot on the way to Proxima B, but it will of course take multiple generations to get there. So we have to say goodbye to Earth, and we have to put all of our expectations on our offspring to convey our culture to them, to convey what it was like to be on Earth to them, and to convey our hope for settling on Proxima, creating Proxima Endeavor. Right now, Earth is in really bad shape, as you can tell from that news broadcast. I knew it was bad, but seeing that number, 30-something% of our land is now uninhabitable, it really underscores... What's that?
Sorry, it's like, where does that number come from?
Let me check the news brief again. It came from a reliable source. It comes from...
CSB is a very reputable research organization.
I know, it's not fake news, it's just like,
Journals.
what? Sorry.
It's essential to the mission. I mean, we can sit here all day and debate the validity of the news, but if you walk out your door, it's evident that things are tense, and you can see it yourself. You know, so I'm gonna buy that number. I'm gonna buy 36.7%. If it's 15 or 20% even higher than accurate, you know what? I'm not calculating a trajectory to another planet, right? I'm calculating the fact that Earth is becoming uninhabitable. So a lot of things have happened, right? Our news is not always the best. Our news is not always trustworthy, but what else do we have left? You know, we have the opportunity. We've been given an opportunity to forget about this place. I mean, I'm already packing. I'm done with Earth. I'm done. Every day it's another problem, another destruction, another loss, another thing I have to say goodbye to. I'm done. I'm done. I'm looking forward to where we're going. So that is...
Exactly. I think going to the positive direction of all of this is really what we should focus on. Yes, it's terrible what's happening with Earth. And I agree. I know it's devastating what's going on for individuals, for their families and things. But I think we really should focus more on what we're going to do to help humanity survive past this point. That's why our mission is so important. Why each of us have such a huge, intricate role on this trip, even though it doesn't seem that obvious in the beginning. I know we are going to be the reason that humanity is saved. And that's something we need to keep in mind. That positive outlook, I think, is how we're going to make sure that we fulfill our mission and make sure that our children and our children's children feel like they really understand where we came from and where we're going.
And I've already said, I'm done. I've already said goodbye, right? I'm not going to begrudge everyone else the grieving process. And that's part of what we're here to do. And that's part of why we have people here who are better at that role than I am. I'm just here to get you onto the ship, to prepare you. And I understand that emotional preparedness is a part of what that means. So that's fine. That's not my thing. But if you need to talk amongst yourselves, I've already said goodbye to everything. I'm done. I'm preparing.
Emily,
Yeah.
hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you don't do the feeling thing. I know, but I do. That's why you asked me.
That's why you're here. Yeah.
Yes, that's yeah. And to me, what's very key is there's a couple of things to remember. First of all, no matter how much we think we've said goodbye and are ready to cut ties, obviously this is a huge transition. And so we will need to support ourselves and our fellow crew members in making that transition and figuring out the way of doing that in the healthiest way possible. On top of that, there are some incredibly important decisions we need to make about how we move ourselves from the Earth to the ship. There's a shipboard culture that will evolve. It will. It's a different environment. There'll be a different culture. Given the fact that we're anticipating that this is a generation ship, and that not only won't we see uh, the new planet, but it would. Emily, remind me, it's our grandchildren might be old at that point.
They're gonna be pretty old. Yeah, their kids will be young, maybe teens, early 20s, most of them.
Which means that by the time we get to a new planet, there will be nobody on that ship who has any memory whatsoever of being on a planet. And so part of what we need to do, and it serves two purposes, is to allow us to find the things we cherish about the Earth, even though so much is falling apart, and to figure out how to communicate that to a generation that has never seen a planet. And so that's going to be a key thing in terms of everybody contributing what they think is important in that way. And aside from kind of whatever spiritual and, because obviously we want our children's children to want to land on a planet, even though they've never seen one. On the other hand, there's also skill sets that we're going to need to decide. I mean, there needs to be education, obviously. So we need to be educating people for shipboard jobs, but also, I mean, you're a pilot gunner, is that right?
Yep, that's right.
So obviously, we're going to need your piloting skills to get us off of Earth. But then after that, I guess we just kind of go, don't we? I'm not a physicist, but I know a little bit about a lot of things. And so the answer is,
It's a little more complicated.
yeah, but there has to be a pilot on the other end. So how do we give people pilot skills? Are we talking simulators? Are we talking an education system? Do we do some sort of suspended animation system where there's a small number of our members who are rotating in and out in some way to allow a brain trust forward? I mean,
I
these
wish
you have to
that.
think about.
The hours would be quite long for any pilot, really. I think it would be a shift system in some way. It just makes logical sense.
There are some automated capabilities of the ship with which our pilot is already familiar. Everybody's been trained, but the idea is to establish training and education so that people can pursue these careers to get us as a civilization from here to there. And, some of that's been predetermined, but a lot of that is the reason that our government on the ship is in itself provisional. Because these are things that should be decided by the people on the ship as well as by our descendants.
Well, I mean, we have to decide to opt in on this thing.
Of course. I mean, that's always a decision. That's always a choice.
Well,
Things will definitely shift and flow, I think. We have a very solid outline so far of general guidelines of where we think we're going to go, but obviously that will change once we're in space and we continue moving forward with the mission. Just like any plan, it should be flexible.
I concur. We need to adapt to some situations that we may find in space that we don't have here. A lot of us are also used to being very much in what I would call survival mode. Here on Earth, I had a role in the military, and now I have a role captaining this ship. It's a very different role. Not all of us are going to have the same roles that we had on Earth, even though we might have some of the same job responsibilities. So I agree that it's important to kind of to work with that as time goes on, and to remain flexible. And that's why we have a military component on our crew. We have a very healthy civilian component, and of course we do have our political component as well to get in the way and tie things up and make red tape, because what will we be without that, right? We wouldn't be civilized at all. So we have things set up enough, but we do have some items that we need to decide on and talk about before we even get on this ship. And I've selected this specific group to kind of have these ethical discussions because I think we represent an interesting cross-section of the people on our ship. And I wanted to start opening up some of these questions. And one of the ones, that we already discussed here is education. Another one is our ability to create, grow, and suspend life as a species, and how we're going to get to where we need to go with that, with a limited number of people on a ship. I'm hearing that there are plans for other chariots. So we are Chariot Alpha. There could be a Chariot Beta. Or Earth could destroy itself before Chariot Beta even launches. So it could be it. We could be it, or we could not be it. There could be extraterrestrial life, or there could not. We don't know. The only thing we can count on once we get on that ship is that we are going to make it, or our descendants are going to make it to Proxima B and to found Proxima Endeavor. So we need to figure out, I think we should operate under the assumption that there are no other ships. What if that program never gets cleared? What if nothing ever launches? What if we're it? We have a limited number of people on this ship. We can take other genetic material with us. But what do you think about how we should handle all of that ethically? I mean, I really want to know what my people are thinking about this particular thing, this particular issue.
Well, yeah, it seems like God spat out a whole bunch of what ifs there, but we need to focus on the mission. I mean, we need to make sure that everyone is on board with this, then on board and out of here, and that we, as great a pilot as I am, I don't think there's any other destination besides Proxima Beta we could reach with what we've got built.
Not with the amount of fuel that we would have now.
No.
And
Calculation.
it was clear to me, given our necessity, that we need to plan for the unexpected, which of course will happen. How do we build in the necessary redundancies before we leave and then continue to increase that redundancy after we leave? I think one of the things is that obviously some of the skill sets that we have are ones that we can share with each other. For instance, if you're a crack pilot but something happens to you, it would be really good if somebody else knows how to pilot a ship. And so, I think part of what we need to discuss with our education system is one of redundancy and of kind of sharing knowledge in a way that allows it to be more robust. And similarly, genetically, I mean, if we're going to be a small group, we'd better make sure we've done some thinking, or else we're going to have this highly inbred little group that will die off in a few generations because of genetic aberrations or something.
So you're saying pre-planning all the, rounds of generations.
Well, you can't pre-plan, but the answer is, what are the factors that you could put in place? So, for instance, yes, if we had egg and sperm banks so that we can increase the genetic diversity of our population, that would probably be very helpful. Just because 233 people is not enough to have genetic diversity.
And we have been given both a budget and physical space on the ship for genetic research and preservation, which has been left, as far as I can tell, intentionally vague for us to decide what we want to do with that space. So if we do want to take additional genetic material with us, we're permitted to do that, but we as a group need to ethically commit to that, as well as to talk about what kind of policies we have in regard for selection in terms of furthering our population. There's room to grow on this ship, but do we want to leave that up to people, or do we want predetermined pairings?
Well, the thing that no one is considering, you're talking about regulations, you're talking about how to do this and how to organize that and how to stuff this many people on board. But you're talking about bodies and things. You're not talking about souls. We have to remember that all of... Oh, you're one of the first people I need to work on, that's clear. We have people... I'm sure that you're all very good at doing what you need to do. But you're not seeing the big picture. The fact that if we get there and we have no souls, we have no feelings for things.
How dramatic.
Then we're not going to be human anymore. We're just going to be automatons.
So how do we preserve souls on the ship?
Lots of drinking, I think.
I mean, I'm prepared for that. I've got some bottles back here, but I'm also okay with being an automaton. Like, I don't need to have a soul. My point is to be a compass to get you to where you need to go. My point isn't to be the soul of the universe. That's why we have other people on the crew for that. So
But then you need to not make fun of them.
Yes, I agree. And I think, in some ways, when you speak of souls, I agree with you. I think that for those that are more computationally based and stuff, it sounds like a woo-woo thing. But, truthfully, the real answer is, what is it we care about? What is it that motivates us? And what is it that brings us together as a society? And we have an opportunity to consciously create a culture, and some of that on this ship, and to propagate it and to have it become a new culture. So what are the things we want to bring? What are the things we don't want to bring? What would we like to leave behind? Maybe we should leave behind, like religion, given how many wars that spurred, or not. I don't know. But the answer is, we need to have conversations about how we are going to preserve our humanity. I agree, our souls, because obviously we're not a bunch of robots, even though some of us might like to be.
I mean, I never even had the opportunity to think about whether I wanted to have some kind of like dream or make art or have children, right? I was in the military. You see how the world is. This is gonna, I didn't even think I'd live to see anything like this happen. So, right now for me, I think, and this is just for me, but I need to just kind of get off the planet, and then from there we can think about maybe we can work together to create some kind of goal. It's weird. I'm not the person that does these long-term goals, because I never thought until I got this assignment that there would be an opportunity to have a long-term goal.
Well, now we'll have nothing but time. Once we're on the ship, once we
It's
take
true.
off, we really have nothing except time on our hands. Once the course is set and we make sure we take on any obstacles and anticipate what's there, we really just have a lot of time to sit around and talk. And I think that's what we're going to be doing a lot of. And I do agree with the two about the fact that the soul is important. Emotions are important, it's true, and I did make lightly of it. But I think what we really need to boil it down to is think about what's really important for us to make a decision of now before we leave Earth. And then while we are up there in space, really thinking more about the culture aspect and the emotion aspect. I think we need to think logistically while we're on Earth. And then once we're in space, we really get to set the tone. There's not going to be that much red tape. It's all just us. 200 something people.
I concur. Do we even need to grieve now? I mean, there's time for that later. There's a whole lifetime to say goodbye to this stuff on Earth. Do we really need that kind of closure? I mean, Earth has closed it for me, not the other way around. Earth has told me to leave. Earth has made me feel like I have to go. Why do I owe anything to this planet? The only thing I owe is to other people, to kind of giving us a chance, to myself, to giving myself a chance to survive.
I'm not sure everyone else feels that way.
That's fine.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Like, I'm just acknowledging how I feel. Everyone else is welcome to do the same.
That's one of the harder things to think about. Is just, I mean, my role for this is to be your pilot, and when we get underway, we still have to deal with some solar wind, getting out of the heliopause. I mean, that's something that no manned ship has done, so that's going to be interesting. And then a century or two of nothing. I apologize. I'm interested in finding out how we'll save our souls from boredom at the very least.
Lots of drinking, lots of card games. That's what I see in our futures.
Yeah,
Perhaps that'll be part of the cultures that we develop is, what do you do in space when you literally can't leave?
Apparently have kids.
Yeah, and the answer is we certainly could have kids. I think that the part of the planning, I agree, a lot of the culture and all that can be developed once we're on ship. But what needs to happen first is the thought about what we need with us in terms of educational resources, databases, skill sets, equipment, genetic material, whatever it is, because you're right, it's a one-way trip. We're never coming back, and we're not going to be in another planet for what, 3 generations?
So how much does this, obviously it's important that our culture continues and that our civilization continues, really. So how important is this notion of whether you want to be technical about it or philosophical or whatever, this notion of reproduction and how that should be handled and or controlled? How important is that to everybody?
Well, it does
Yeah,
have to
that's
have
very important.
How so to you?
Well,
first.
no, go ahead. You're provisional president after all.
Oh, I feel like I spoke a lot. Feel free to go first, and then I'll speak after. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. It's I think it's just absolutely necessary to have stored genetic material, and I guess it'll be helpful for the people on the ship to also supply,
Samples.
if they wish. And I mean, for you all, something I can't contribute. Are you willing to be surrogates? I mean, not only your own kids, but these eggs that we'll have on board, would you be willing to carry those? And then see the kid for the rest of your life?
Well, we were asked some of those questions before we left. When we were still applying. And yes, I had to say that I would be willing to be a surrogate for others. Because there will be stored genetic material, I've been given to understand, that we are taking a wide variety of already of embryos that have been frozen that represent a huge genetic component of the Earth's diversity. So I would certainly assume that most of the women on board have agreed to be a part of this as a way to continue our civilization.
And obviously, it needs to happen. I mean, there'll be thought about this, but what is the difference in status between a biological child of 2 crew members versus a child that is gotten from the genetic banks? Certainly, I hope we figure out ways that that's all equal. But and I mean, we're humans. We're going to love. We're going to fall in love, and we're going to hate each other and have sex with each other. And
If we choose to. I mean, I am a symbol of the vessel upon which we're traveling. I am whatever is needed. So if it's required of me, I'll do it. If that's my purpose, it's fine.
Obviously, we don't want half of our population to turn into brood mares. I mean, we all have key skill sets. But I also think that's important that we, look at genetic diversity. So I think it can be a combination.
Well, and what about, you say brood mares, but what about the opposite? What if, there are some women who decide not to have any kids, or all these men on board who might not have their sperm selected, and then a generation or 2 from now, there are a few matriarchs who have, a huge amount of the population, being able to call them mother and grandmother, and the rest of us are just, spare parts.
Obviously, that doesn't work either. We're going to have to, and that's the kind of thing I have a feeling that there's only so much conscious design we can do ahead of time, and at some point it's kind of, how does it go? So what are the things we can do that can move things in healthy directions to keep any of those, and some of it, I hate to say it, but is to think of some of these worst case scenarios and to try to figure out how to not head down those paths.
Well, it was my understanding that there would be something in the food, perhaps, that would suppress normal ovulation for the females on board, so that the only pregnancies that occurred would be the deliberately implanted embryos. That way the geneticists could make sure there were no genetic anomalies, there were no children born with severe genetic
Wait a
defects.
second. You're suggesting eugenics? I mean, I think, isn't that a little much? I mean,
Yeah,
This is not genetic.
The food.
is
That's not
fine.
good for the food or for me.
Yeah, and I'm not planning on drinking any sterilizing solutions. I mean, the answer is obviously we need enough diversity, but I would think that people could choose to bear a child if they wanted to.
I would think it's a simple form of just doing the blood test in the med bay to make sure that these people are genetically capable of being together and having a child, or taking a sample from the bank, as it were, and not have a conflict genetically. I don't think that it would be something that we need to forcibly sterilize or put pause to anybody's menstruation cycles. I don't think that that's quite as necessary yet. I think at this point, anybody that would be willing to further the population would probably do so, at least for the first generation. Afterwards is when we're really going to start seeing some trouble if we don't keep updated records in the med bay.
Which is why I think that, the government is provisional, and it's why that, as you mentioned earlier, we need to adapt to these situations, and we need to recognize that the children we have will probably feel differently about this than we do. And I'm comfortable with that, but then again, I can be really detached about this stuff.
Well, I do think some things we could make some decisions now, and stuff like the genetics, for example, probably wouldn't need to be as adaptable as, say, flight coordinates. I don't think that that's something that we need to make a loose guideline. I think that's something that could be a little stricter, especially since it is the future of the human race we are talking about here.
I don't want to force choices on all of our, complement here. But it is something that we should be thinking about. As we said, we'll have nothing but time once we get out there. But when it comes to what we're taking with us, that's something we need to decide now. If we're taking other genetic material with us, then we really need to decide how that's utilized before we get into a more aggressive situation in a contained environment, for example.
Yeah, I guess just opt in across the board. Don't need to go ahead and put restrictions on anyone right now.
Oh, no, I agree.
But I think obviously, I mean, that the part that's a given is given how small the population will be for a while, that the genetic heritage of any children born obviously needs to be carefully kept track of, so that we don't end up with inbreeding and reinforcement of recessives and things like that, because we are going to have to bring that in there somewhere.
That is a concern, and I mean, I'm willing to disclose when we filled out those surveys and applied for this project. I selected that form. I said I'd be willing to carry one or more children, and that as far as I know, I am capable of doing so. That was certainly also part of the physical exam that I had to go through. Did I feel pressured by that process? A little bit. I don't have a strong desire to have children, mainly because I never thought I would live to need to think about that, right? But did I feel a little pressured into checking that box because I knew it would help me qualify, even though it obligated me to do something like that with my body? Yeah. I'll say it. I did it. I did it because I wanted the job. I want to survive. This planet's going to blow up any day now. I'm done with Earth, and if that means making that kind of deal, then so be it. I don't feel amazing about that every day, but I'm just ready to pick up and move on.
I just want to take a moment to just confess something here. When I was told that I should apply, and it makes sense. I'm one of very few pilots who've gone back and forth to Mars. And also, I don't know, this sounds egotistical, good breeding stock. Okay, I'm in the military. I don't have a family history of nearly anything, except for being dumb enough to still be in the military for so many generations. But I want you all to know that I said no. I'm not interested in being a father, and I don't know. I just sitting there for so long, just on the ship, just doing nothing. I don't want there to be. I don't want there to be an expectation that I'm going to change my mind. I don't want there to be just this culture of, oh, thank God for all the people who are volunteering. You know, my genetic material is, I was going to say it's mine. No, it's me. And I get to decide, you know, to throw it down the drain if I want. Sometimes literally.
So that sounds very neat.
That's really crass.
But what do we do on the other end with the fictitious person on board who wants to spread his genetic material, and I say his deliberately, and 10 years from now we see 10, 20, 30, 40, how many children that this person has then fostered and is proud of it? Are we... Personally, I find that a little disturbing.
I mean, there has to be a limit, right? Like, genetically, we're just not going to be sustainable if that scenario occurs. So, hey, I'm going to say it, even though the only man on this call is not currently at a station, there's going to have to be a limit to that, right? There's going to have to be. And there might have to be a limit on how many children a woman can have, too, you know. A woman on a ship with a role, with a career and a role, that's great, but a woman in that situation sure has a lot more stability than any of us do right now. And I know that I'm probably not the only one who thinks that my priorities in life might be different if that were the possibility. If my job were just to captain a ship and not worry about nuclear annihilation every day. Hey, maybe I'd want 4, 5, 6 kids. I don't know. I haven't been there yet. But should that be permitted? Because, you know, that certainly would ensure my genetic material, you know, is present. But we need that genetic diversity like we were talking about before. So limiting how much, especially for men, might be a necessary step. Limiting the amount of children.
And obviously, I mean, we don't. How many people does this ship hold? I mean, obviously, there's a limit to how many new lives we can bring on board until we get to a planet, right?
Yeah. Well, so our initial complement is 233, and there is a carefully prepared plan of expansion. So we have to stay within those numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I can send you the schematics and all the specifications, because we definitely need to stay within that number or risk overpopulation, and that's something that we can't have on a ship. I feel like our generation is going to have a lot of problems dealing with that, but if our children are born knowing that they have a limited choice in the matter, are they really going to feel enslaved by that choice, by that lack of choice? They never had a choice to begin with. And how much choice do we have anyway? Like, everything's about to explode here. What choice do I really have about whether I want to have kids on Earth? Like, lead them into a world of destruction where they're going to get blown up tomorrow? Like, how much of a choice is that anyway?
Yeah, I mean, there's no ship that you could build that's infinitely big that'll allow, you know, anyone to have any number of kids that they want. Eventually there is a limit on there. Or, you know, breaking up 2 kids because, hey, you're way too closely related.
Yeah, and you see that happen with countries now, especially with the overpopulation issues on Earth itself. So that's going to be something that we'll have to deal with eventually. I don't think we have to make that decision now, not within the next couple years, but definitely when we start seeing our population increase while we're out there in space. That's going to be when that discussion ends up happening. We'll start capping then. I think at this point our biggest struggle is just deciding if we need to take genetic material with us to help compensate for those that don't want to supply samples, and how much of it we want to bring. And then a lot of these other discussions will more than likely be something that we'll really need to debate more than just the few of us here.
Well, I mean, you're provisional president. How do you see that debate taking place? Should that constitution be written before we launch off?
I don't think that we need to go quite that far, but definitely something for everybody that is volunteered and chosen to be able to go onto this ship. It's definitely something where I want to hear everybody's voice and opinion about first before we really sit down and ratify any solid arrangements as to what people are doing.
That's something I didn't really think about. What is the official system of governance on this ship? I mean, obviously, when it comes to command and ship operations, the captain's in charge. But, I mean, is this a democracy? Is it a maritime? There's all kinds of ways we could do this, but we better figure it out before we go, or we're just going to end up with a bunch of infighting. I don't know.
I'm
There,
curious how much decision-making power we actually need to invest anyone with, given that there's not going to be many decisions to make.
there is a direct voting system. One of the things that we really need to stick to is this direct voting system. So what that means is every week, everyone on the ship will be permitted to directly vote on certain issues. We can also have elected officials, just as we do in various governments on the earth, who represent our interests. But given the limited capacity of the ship and the low number of people, a direct election process is entirely manageable considering the technology we have. The details of that, however, are not something I can interfere with because of my role as the captain. So that would have to occur under the discretion of the provisional president, and it would certainly rely on others here to ensure that our population takes an active role in voting on those issues and ensuring an active role in our government.
Currently, I do know that we do have guidelines of a government system in place on the ship, unless it's a military decision that needs to be made, and otherwise anything dealing with the ship itself will be made under the captain's discretion. So there is a system in place initially. If that will stay in place is something that will need to be discussed by the members of the council. Once that decision is made, obviously, any options that are available will definitely be put to a vote so that the population has equal voice, just like we have in most of our governments on Earth. I don't see why we need to make this more complicated than it needs to be, especially upon the initial first few years. That's going to be the most stressful for our ship. Going with something familiar seems like the best course of action for now, but as I said, things can change in the future, and obviously everybody will have a voice in the system that we will have in place.
I don't see why we necessarily need the military after we get underway. I mean, it's been increasingly important here on Earth, but once you have 200 some odd people, if the goal is preservation of the ship and you're saying, oh, anything having to do with the ship belongs to the captain, well, everything on the ship pertains to the ship. We were just talking about it. Oh, shit, we might have to restrict men from reproducing too much. I think reduce anyone from reproducing too much because of the limitations of the ship. So, I think everyone has a vested interest in keeping the ship safe, and maybe captain is an elected position too.
So, I mean, somebody has to enforce any of the laws that we pass. And it would certainly rely upon the military component of the ship to do that too. As for whether the
marshals instead of civilian courts,
if that's what people
that
choose,
we purposely don't do.
It's up to what we choose to do. If you feel outspoken about that, then you have a vote, and you can use it. And we will have our weekly vote, and we'll, that's an issue we can consider.
Government by committee, it's funny because, there's all those theories. Maybe what we need to recruit is some experts in organizational dynamics and organizational development to the planning process, because it seems to me that we're just kind of leaving a whole lot to chance. And I don't know, I'm getting these visions of, oh, something like the Lord of the Flies, where there's these, like, various little factions and things like that. I mean, it's starting to really frighten me a bit. So how do we come up with a way of doing this in an orderly fashion? Is it from above, from below?
We could always, I'm open to creating documentation prior to launch day. So if that's something that we decide we want to do, that we do want to figure it out before we leave, that it's more important to you to say this is what we stand for before we get on the ship, and maybe to even let people who are left here know that, then we commit to doing it. But I can speak for myself. I have time for that. I have the luxury of not really giving a shit about anything on Earth. Other people probably feel differently and want to take their time to say goodbye. So if we decide as a group that we would like to create some documentation to ensure some social stability upon departure, I'm certainly willing to work with the provisional president to make sure that process is fair and includes everybody's voice.
And I'm just curious, provisional president, was that an elected position or an unappointed position? How do you get to be provisional president?
Well, it's something that has to deal with my involvement on the project on Earth and how things developed from there. I started as a civilian scientist, and I've been very involved in not only the technology that helps navigate the ship that we will be on, but also my duties as an astrophysicist, being able to understand, where trajectory is going and how it's going to be like in space. So obviously, based on my educational qualifications and some of my experiences and ability to work with several types of groups of people on Earth, they chose that I would be somebody that would be best suited to be the provisional president while we are initially launching. Things may change in the future, but this is currently how that position came to be. They did create a government outline initially as to how things would run on the ship, but obviously this could also be changed. But that's how that kind of worked in that way, and it's just been a very interesting experience so far.
And we've all gone through our qualifying processes, so we're all at the top of our fields. So I trust that the provisional president is qualified, and I also trust that, like the position of captain may be up for re-election, so might her position as well.
Yeah, I don't think, well, it'll be interesting to see how these positions could change after we do some training and education. I feel like the number one thing that we should be doing as soon as we get underway with nothing else to do is making sure that no one is indispensable, because anyone could die at any time. I mean, I know the classic example is we need to make sure that there's someone at the other end who is still a pilot, but I think that it's important for, a captain and a provisional president and even a librarian or an artist to train their replacements, even if it's someone that's going to replace them next year, next month.
It's weird for me.
Be worthless here after we,
It's weird for me to think about it. Go ahead.
I think redundancy is going to be tremendously important. Among other things, with that small number of people, all of us are going to need to be, what was the word you used, polymath, Francesca? I think we're all going to be our own kind of polymaths, because everybody's going to need to take on skill sets that they didn't have before. And on top of that, we're going to have to learn how to teach those skill sets to the next generation. And obviously, there's some people who probably are more inclined to be teachers than others, but we all have information that we're going to need to figure out how to document, how to archive, how to impart it, and how to kind of codify it, that it's findable. So
I just find it odd to think about the fact that I'll have time to do art. That just seems like such a place of extreme, I don't want to say privileged because that sounds like I'm really being more aggressive than I am. It just seems like the kind of opportunity that I was never afforded in my life. And it's really strange to think about anything other than survival and how to express that. It's weird to think about expressing that as even being a priority in my life. I think a lot about purpose, and when we talk about things like having children, it's more of a matter of practicality for me. So even thinking about that is really hard for me to reconcile, although I do see the importance of having a creative division on our ship and an inclusive array of voices on our ship.
All human civilizations throughout humanity and pre-humanity have included music and art. I have seen the caves in Lascaux, France, that are more than 30,000 years old and have beautiful artworks in them. I've seen things in the United States that are more than 30,000 years old that have decoration. There are drum ceremonies in all cultures. Everyone has this, I used the word spirit earlier. I used the word soul, and some of you sort of thought that was laughable, which upset me a bit. But please think about the fact that throughout humankind, we have always had these creative, these artistic outpourings. Sometimes it's necessary to do what you're doing right now, to make the rules, to do the lists, to gather the things, to get people on board. But once we're away, we need to have those creative roles enhanced for many people, including many who may not have ever experienced their creative sides before. I think that will be very important.
I agree. Absolutely.
What would be some ideas you feel that would bring more of this creative side out in people once they are on board and staying in space? I'm actually curious to hear, is it music that you would want to have everybody learn, have painting be part of their life? What's something that's creative that you feel should be there?
One of the easiest first things that you can do is hold a public drum circle. And you can drum on anything. You can drum on your, I don't know if you can hear that. You can drum on your keyboard. You can drum on your desk. Oh my. I think my computer is going away. Hello?
We still see you.
I still hear you.
It's trying to restart because I have some some updates to install.
Technology.
Anyway. Yes.
Hopefully that won't happen on the ship.
Anyway,
I'm sure it'll
I have done that with students at the college, and we would start drumming in a public place, and others would begin to join us. They would come because they heard, and then someone would get up and start moving to the drum beat, and someone else would start moving, and someone would start humming, and someone would bring a flute, and we would start with 5 or 10, and we would end up with 30 or 40 or 50 moving to the music and expressing that music in whatever way seemed appropriate to them. So I would love to be able to sponsor the same sort of event on board.
Well, shit, I don't want everyone to know we're going to be having fun up there.
There's going to be enough time for fun as well as work. And I do think it's important that we make sure that there are musicians who come on board and that there are people with the various creative skills. Because among other things, we've got enough time. People might actually be able to, like Emily, I mean, imagine having the time for a hobby.
I don't even know what that is. My life is just preparing for this journey.
And certainly that piece of it needs to be there. What I would like to encourage people to do, kind of as a vehicle for moving into that, is for people as they're dealing with the transition for saying goodbye to Earth and for being on Chariot and such. Aside from all of this logistical planning and really important methodological stuff, is what is it? Yes, we have to bring genetic material and this, that, and the other thing. What are the essential things that you need to bring because it's part of who you are as a person, or something in your family or cultural background that you think needs to be preserved? What are the things that we want to see preserved from Earth and brought with us? Because don't forget, anything we don't bring 2 generations from now, it's as if it never existed.
Alcohol.
Yeah.
Alcohol is my answer to that question.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know. There's that too, but
literature, art, history, culture, I mean, it goes on from there.
you know, I'm gonna teach a handful of people to be pilots, but you know, I'm a cook. I've been cooking for most of my life. I don't know. That's my hobby. I found some time for it, and I mean, the drum circle's a neat idea because you don't even need to bring next to anything to do it. But what sort of, how much of the budget and how much of the weight for liftoff? You know, how many trips up this space elevator we got here are we gonna supply to I don't know, culinary needs? I can tell you, flying back and forth from Mars, we didn't eat very well. Of course. So I think, yeah, that's a really important, valuable thing to talk about how we're going to have the time for everyone to become different forms of artists, and I hope that we can, find time for and value in culinary art.
So we need a wok, we need a paella pan, we need a rice cooker.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
what you're thinking?
That's right.
I eat dehydrated meals usually. That's just my thing. I just add the water, eat some frozen things. I never really thought about whether there was more to food than that.
Desserts.
Maybe we get together and do a dinner sometime before we leave. And if you get a chance to see what cuisine is like, maybe we can.
Real cooking, yes. I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah, I know. Well, maybe we could take lessons. It occurs to me that if one of the things, especially when we're still Earth adults on the ship and we don't have the next generation, that having kind of a education exchange of some sort, where kind of like everybody takes turns teaching other people things they know. You could run a cooking class, and we could do a drumming thing, but it could also be, I want to learn about astrophysics. So, President Martinez teaches me about astrophysics.
I could certainly do that. I would love to actually be able to educate more people on it, especially considering several generations are going to be living in space. It's going to be essential knowledge for pretty much everyone on the ship. And especially if there is an emergency, there's got to be people that understand how to solve it as quickly as possible. So I definitely think that an exchange of both culture and knowledge is going to be absolutely necessary for everyone on board, whether it's hobby knowledge or musical knowledge or actual study and your specification of what you have taken from Earth with you. Definitely think that that's going to be very important, not only for us to just make sure everybody understands where we came from, but also to help build this new culture that we want to go into.
I agree. There's a book I read. It was a science fiction book, but in it, the civilization, everybody had to have an art, a science, and a craft. I think it was.
Well, it's a wonderful outline then. Maybe we should have that as something that everybody should have.
Yeah, and everybody.
We're about to live some real science fiction.
Yeah.
True. And actually, we are coming to the end of our meeting time for tonight. I do have to create some official reports, so I am going to produce a little summary. People are very interested to know about who is on the ship and who's preparing to leave. So the public is going to know about this eventually, and they already know about it, but they're going to know about us eventually, each of us, and the governments, of course, already do. So that's weighing pretty heavily on me, and I'm going to create a very balanced report based upon what we talked about, and I will publish all of that with your input. But before we sign off, is there anything else that you feel we should talk about? I mean, I think we need to resume our discussion about government and reproduction and how that will happen. I do think education is important. We've decided that. And having time for these hobbies also important. We've decided that. I do feel like that structure could be put more in place once we're on the ship versus the other important issues of the government and how we're going to reproduce and grow our civilization. And I think, these are the 2 or 3 main things we really need to work on. So I will talk to the provisional president and see if we can draft some kind of preliminary formal government document, and then we can all reconvene and evaluate that document next time. And then if anybody has anything they'd like to bring to the table next time regarding reproductive rights on the ship, or how we decide to manage our growing population, I think that's something that we might need to look at too. And then after that, we'll have our first vote, and we can set all that up next time as well. Anybody else have any other items of business before we sign off?
Yeah.
I would like to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gunnar.
Okay. Well, I feel very strongly that we should have as many decisions made ahead of time as possible. Because right now, we're still not 100% definitely going to be on the ship, and I think that we should have as much things, clearly written down and expected, so when we opt in, we do it with full knowledge. I mean, the flip side of that is then I think, any sort of constitution will definitely have to take into account that all these children born on the ship are kind of stuck with it, and should probably have a pretty strong voice and changing it. But I want to know what I'm agreeing to.
I think that makes a lot of sense. What I would like to do is to encourage people. We have some archival areas available on Francesca. I love the piece that you put there. To think about writing and depositing things there that help communicate your priorities, your sense of what's valuable that we want to bring with us, what we want to leave behind.
Yeah, and I personally, I'm a little aimless there. I am obviously not any of the creative people here. But if any of you want to reach out to me and kind of guide me through that, I'd hate to leave Earth and then find I missed something. I don't feel like I will miss anything, but I don't know. I just know where I'm going, not where I've been. So if any of you feel like comfortable helping me with that, walking me through that process, I'm just saying a lot of goodbyes today. Anyone else? All right. I think we're going to call it for tonight, and we will reconvene soon. And it's a lot of serious things to consider. So thank you. Game off. So out of game now. Awesome first session. That was so cool. I loved how freeform it was. I really, really do. It's just great. It's amazing working with so many fantastic role players. I'm beginning to see how, yeah, right. I'm beginning to see how my instinct about having less structure about each session was the way to go. Because, even what I had planned is out the window, and the direction we've pursued is much, much better and where we want to go. So that's really fun. We've got some stuff to work on should we choose in between, and now we're all on Discord and communicating there, so I feel great about that. And yeah, other thoughts?
Well, I have one just huge disappointment. No one asked me about the beer that I was drinking.
I was thinking about doing that,
Does anyone want to ask me what I'm drinking?
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Sierra Nevada sour beer, and you know what they say about sour beers? Anything goes. Yes, okay.
Oh man.
I don't know how I was gonna say that with a straight facing character. God damn, I was gonna try. Oh.
I
Bring
actually
it up, but I didn't think that my character would make a point of it. I made a comment about drinking earlier, and then everybody seemed to be like, "Oh no."
I picked up on it eventually.
Stuff.
So like only one of these bottles, the almost empty bottle of whiskey is mine. The rest of them are Tina's. I went out, she's streaming, and I went out and I was like, "Hey Tina, I need to borrow this. I'm not gonna drink any of it. I just need it for my LARP." And she was like, "Okay," and I took it.
Set dressing,
Yep.
needs to be there.
Yeah.
I should say something that I'd like to explore more next time. And I don't know if we'll be able to do this just given the tone that we've set, but excuse me. Just banter or like getting to know each other. Like, I think my character was super serious the entire time. The conversation was really serious most of the time.
Yeah.
But I have props back there, and I am so ready
Nice.
to like, chat about shit that I found in the barracks.
I have gambling dice. So
Oh, cool.
Nice. Do we want to try? Do we maybe want to try to do? I don't know how practical this is for anyone else. Do we want to try to do dinner together next time and all have our food with us?
Sold.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right, maybe.
I would like to have dinner together, and maybe something that you could use. This is just a suggestion, but say like straight up, hey, just to make sure that the mood's in the right place, can we like just have time when we are talking just as people, like get to know you stuff.
I love that. And I can set the tone for that and then place the kind of like social and emotional labor of that onto people, not me, because my character wouldn't do that. And that's awesome kind of as a scripted PC to be able to just give that to everyone else. And as a GM to just, give it to you.
Does that sound like something that you would do?
Yeah, that would be something I would do.
Yeah.
Is we could do something where maybe the answer is these formal meetings have to be, or at a particular time, and we all happen to sign on early. And so it's kind of like, you know what?
Oh, that's cool.
We're all gathering for dinner, and we've got like 45 minutes before the meeting, but we decided we would all eat dinner together. And so this is the time that we're not doing formal work.
I love it.
Oh,
Love it.
yes.
And then that way it's kind of like it's not interrupting the formal meeting. It's before it.
And Jody Lee, I wonder if maybe your character would also be a force for this, just more laid back conversational stuff.
Certainly, I could certainly see doing that, and engaging you in a little bit of food related.
Oh no! Oh god! Okay.
Yeah, now you'll have to know your food stuff.
I'm going to have to like cook a meal and then know everything about it so I can talk about it. Yes, there was a possibility that I was going to eat dinner and claim that I hand-made the pasta, even though it is straight from Safeway.
Nice. I was thinking one other thing that it's interesting because I've played a character similar to this one, but not exactly the same. A lot of you have seen me play Minerva or have at least seen me post about her. This character is wildly different in an unexpected way. Emily does not have any kind of like hidden passion. She has no hidden passion for singing like Minerva. She has no smoldering romance for a guy like Minerva. She's got nothing. She's like, screw this place, I'm out of here. She's got nothing. And it creates a whole different dynamic to this type of serious, job-oriented, militaristic character that I had never even thought about. So I, as a creative person especially, have never been in the place to say, like, hey, friends, can you help me find, like, my purpose in life besides my job? My real life has been finding my purpose or knowing my purpose in life and positioning my career so that I can do what I love as a job. So, like, it's totally opposite from how I really am. And I look forward to just kind of, I actually felt a little bit immersed during this session in terms of, like, I was feeling this character's anxiety of having to trust Sharon's character and Jody Lee's character, especially, to trust them to, like, guide her to find her passion, to find, like, her creativity. And it was so weird. And then I was like, that I was not immersed because I was also talking out of character. And I was like, Oh my God, that's terrifying as a creative person to like not feel creative 24/7. It was like horrible. So I really look forward to exploring that, and that's not something I planned on at all. And it's a really fun component of having people segmented into like military and political and creative. Our characters can be, and some of us are very multifaceted, but I really made this character with the point of like she's just here to freaking lead. So, yeah, that's
But
kind
sometimes
of,
that leads to really a diverse way for everybody to roleplay too, because you have people that are those kind of characters, and you have the super creative people, and then you have the ones that really just kind of want to make everybody go in their specific direction. So,
yeah.
like, I think letting people experience that kind of dynamic going on a small crew, like how this is, just really works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had fun pushing back against you, Captain. It was like, wait a second. How do you
And I'm also noticing here
I
as
had
a
a lot of fun at it.
as a point of process too, we're kind of naturally doing a recap slash debrief at the end of the session, like as soon as we went out of game. I think that's totally fine. The only reason I'm noting it and noted it in our Discord was because I am thinking about maybe that being part of each session. It's kind of weird to abruptly end a session and sign off with the in-game being the last of it, especially with viewers. And also, thank you for the bits. Whoever just gave me bits. Oh, Judy, thank you so much for the bits. Your bits are part of what makes this possible at a very reasonable price for the people who have paid to play this game. So thank you so much for your support. Yay, I have great friends. I love you guys. So yeah, I think having that debrief, like 15-minute recap built into the end might be a good way to go. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I like it.
It
Cool.
also gets everybody a chance to really continue to meet people outside of their character. Like,
Yeah.
especially if things got really tense with, like, dynamics wise, and, like, I didn't really smile most of the session because that's not that kind of character, and, now you guys get to know me more, and I think that works well for even when we go into the paid system, of having your crew, like, be game off, and then they get to chat amongst each other, and it kind of makes everybody feel more relaxed afterwards. It's like a natural part of LARPing, I feel.
Yeah. I like it, and also I think that, and we talked about this before we started playing, getting everybody set up on Discord. I think like the more we play, the more I'm like, that needs to be done before anything else happens at all. That has to be like item number 0 with the welcome packet, is to get people set up, because now that we have that communication open, we can do all the character development. So I encourage you to use that. I think it really needs to be really, really like the number one most important thing in the setup process with the new players. And what's really interesting is like I hadn't even thought of using Discord until we got to talking about how this game might go and how do we communicate out of game. I loved using it for in and out of game communication during the session. That was great. I found it really easy. It's very lightweight. It's not bogging down my computer or stressing me out in real life. Love it. So let me know what you think. And I don't want to hold everyone else up, but any other comments, Marshall?
I'd be interested in real quick just saying like 1 or 2 things that did work for you and 1 or 2 things that did not work for you.
Like as an end session kind of recap thing?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly. Especially since, we get to do this once more, and as all creators in this, I definitely want to help make sure that the game is going well for everyone here.
Awesome. Let's do it. Go for it.
A third thing besides what went well and didn't work well, what is it that you would like to ask other people to do in their role play that would enable you to do something that you would like to have happen? Okay.
That's a good question.
I'm just putting this as notes in the general chat, but keep going.
So I wanted to say that something that was really cool for me was having that confession that Gunnar Preston made of like, hey, I said that I was not interested in being a parent. And there was that moment of he like had this confession and then like ended it with a joke and was only met with like, "Oh, that's crass," and like did not receive any emotional support. It was actually really fascinating. The fact that I got to like take off my headphones and like normally, like when I'm a player, I'm like terrified of missing content, but at that moment it felt so right.
And we talked about you.
We did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, now that the man is gone, like I totally went on about like how you shouldn't really. I said something about like men should be restricted on how many children that they can father. As soon as you left.
A little bit of that.
It almost went to the direction of you really can't say that you won't breed because that will end up happening anyway. Like, it was almost
Oh,
like
that's so. I'm gonna get in on that because this expectation of parenthood is irrelevant to just real life of like people deciding they never want kids, which like is a huge choice that a lot of people don't get respect for, especially like women who might like do a medical procedure that might make them infertile or. Oh, there's so much to unpack there, and I love it.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
Something else that I really appreciated was I think we did a good job. I think Tara was you who said this idea that the reason we are talking today is we are representative, and I just realized like, oh yeah, of course, look at us. We have a whole swath of like different roles, and it's like that was cool. Pursuant to that, something that I'd like to see. In order to draw more out of that is actually the captain and the pilot's military perspective. Since we are representing the military,
Yeah.
I was just like super anti-military. And then things that didn't work for me that I think is just as much for your design interest, Tara, would be I found it really hard to check Discord during this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything to do about that, but I probably would not have a full conversation when I could be talking to all of you.
Right.
Additionally, I felt a little hemmed in by how serious the conversation was, but I think the dinner and get to know you bit before the proper meeting began.
Do you think that should maybe be the first session for this game, or like maybe just formality limited to introductions and then bam, like dinner, or how do you think that should work?
I actually think.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I think it actually works for people to explore their characters to do the dinner thing first. So it's like dinner in a show essentially, but you would have the dinner first as them in character, getting to know each other as their characters, and after the initial introduction, obviously, and then going right into, okay, now we have to have our formal meeting. Here's why we were all gathered here today. And you would go into that experience of discussing these issues that you would for the ship and all the things entailed for the game that session. I think that works as a really good way to help people relax and get a feel for their character. And then they go into the more serious discussions.
Yeah, it's also interesting now. This is like a game design note. So the game, it's a LARP, but people are watching. This time I didn't publicize the stream because I honestly didn't know that the sound would work. Figures the one time I'm not like, everyone watch the stream right now. The sound is fine. What the hell? I almost feel like it might have changed, at least from the person moderating it, might have changed the tone, and I don't think I like that. I really think I need a moderator who is not playing. So next time, like Adam and Judy are both on, next time I should just ask one of them to hang out and like make sure no one says anything horrible, and to thank people who come in and give bits, to answer questions about the game, stuff like that, or even just build in some commands on Twitch so that if someone has a question, all they have to do is type in like !chariot. I didn't think about that a lot. Normally Nick does all of that, but he's at work right now, and he will be, he's usually on Thursdays. So I'm like, oh my god, I didn't even think about that because I usually just have someone there that knows all that info. So that's something too. Yes, thank you, Adam. They're in there saying, we got your back. So yeah, having a mod in there is going to help me direct the game towards the players and not towards the audience, because I love the audience coming in. I love people giving bits. I love that people could follow and subscribe, but really it's about the people who like paid to play the game, or, you know, in your case, volunteered to like test this crazy mess and make it into something real. So yeah, that's kind of my big thing. But in terms of what I liked, what I felt like could be improved, and what I'd like to see next time. What I'd like to see next time, I already said. I'd like to see some character development in terms of what are Emily's passions and hobbies, because she has no idea. She doesn't have one. And that's like a really foreign concept for me as a player and as a person. Like, I've never done that before. So I'd love that, and I'd love to just kind of give it up and let the other characters take that. What didn't work? Let's see. I felt like what didn't work was over planning, even though I really forced myself to keep a very open schedule. I'm like thanking my instinct for making not too stringent a schedule, because it ended up being even like less schedule oriented than that, which is great. I mean, I love freeform, so it's great, but I'm thinking about future runs, and like I want people to know that I've worked on like workbook documentation and, you know, that whole big communication document that I put out today. I want them to know that I'm like organized and legit, but I also don't think that there needs to be a plan as much as a GM who just kind of knows what they're doing, and the GMs that I've hired already like know how to do that. So that's kind of like a rough spot for me. As far as what worked really well, the flow of conversation, and I think what structure I did have, like the news item, was kind of cool to drop in. I think I might actually want to be more impromptu than I was about the news item. I was nervous that we wouldn't have a lot to talk about, so I wanted to start off with like a multi-paragraph concrete thing, and I don't really know that I needed to. I do think people are more curious about the world and the setting, and they want a little more structure. So, yes, Marshall.
I thought it set the scene well.
Thank you.
We didn't really use it a lot afterwards because we had a lot of momentum that didn't need to get bogged down in the minutia of this world. But starting out with that made me just sit there and be like, "World's fucked, man."
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for each session, like structurally, it makes sense to have like a news brief in the beginning, for the players to kind of set the scene like you would in any acting thing, really. And it also helps us kind of decide how does our character feel in that moment and stuff, because it kind of just clues us in, like, where are we emotionally right now? And emotion's a very large part of this game, so I think that's really important. I also think, like, Tara, having maybe not, like, strict things that you want to have in each session, but at least an outline of, okay, so if topics run dry and there's not a lot that the PCs can talk about at that point, what's something that we can bring up as a situation or a discussion point for them to talk about? Because even in like D&D games, or even in parlor LARPs, there's a guideline of like, here's the plot points we can bring up. If this plot doesn't seem like it's really catching players, let's bring up this topic.
Yes. Yeah. And one thing,
for your experienced GMs that'll be running this as captains,
yeah,
I think it's important to have something like that.
And the news items that I'm typing up, I'm not, originally I was planning on labeling them like session 1 news item, and I already have 3 players that are signed up for multiple runs, so each experience I want to be different for them. Yeah, people are like, I'm like, well, somebody believes in me, or they really like sci-fi. So yeah, it could be both. So I kind of want to leave it as a resource for myself and other GMs, but also to not structure it. So if like things are slowing down and you need something, hey, there's a whole, you know, Google Docs folder of like news items. So every time I make a news item, bam, it goes in the thing, and then they can, you know, use it or not. And I have a background as a journalist, so it takes me like 5 minutes to write up like a 3 or 4 paragraph news story. Super easy resource. That could be really cool.
Too. So like, if their session is while they're still on Earth, here's the news items.
Yeah.
If they are on the ship for X amount of years, like first 100 years, here's some news things that you can release.
Yeah. Hey, Chad,
you know,
for in the chat. See ya. Yeah, I like that idea, and that's thinking big picture, Kathleen, in the way that I detailed some of my bigger plans for the game before we went on stream. That really fits in line with that. And I also want to make sure it's stuff that the other GMs can use. Because I'm not, like, I'm paying, the idea of paying people to run this game is awesome, but it's not, like, a ton of money, right? It's something, but it's, like, it's still coming out to like $9 or $10 an hour, which isn't a lot. So I want to be able to just hand them everything they need and not have them create a lot of extra stuff if they don't want to. If they want to, that's great. But yeah, yeah. So
I'd be interested in hitting the like good, what worked, what didn't work for some of the other players. Real
yeah,
quick.
let's do that. Jody Lee, how about you? What worked? What didn't work? And how can we support your character next time?
So it was interesting because everyone was being so clearly organizational. And my character is all about the creativity side. And so I was able to just go, guys, there's this whole other planet out there, this whole other side of humanity that you're not considering. So I had a lot of juice to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. And then you were all so dismissive of, and all those creative types.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
It hurt me to be like that, by the way. Like, out of game hurt me, because that's me in real life.
And I'm like, okay, at least I can support her, even if nobody else will.
Oh.
In the end, I swung around to be able to be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, because I have to win the other side in. So.
Yeah, Jody Lee, what?
Get you in a drum circle.
Jody Lee, what did not work out so well for you?
Mostly just figuring out how to use the what's the other thing called?
The Discord.
This is hanging. The what?
The Discord?
Discord, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it still keeps telling me that I need to log out and log in and recreate and.
Yeah, I think that's gotta be at the top of the process, even before character creation, is just getting people on Discord and then going through the rest of it with them during character creation. So yeah, so we'll continue to work with you on that. Now, my Discord mod's at work, but he'll be around tomorrow before he goes to work, and we'll make sure you get situated. And how can we support your character next time?
I think if at least one person is still a little dismissive of all that artsy fartsy stuff, so that I have something to push against.
Mm-hmm.
Captain, can that be you?
I'm glad you liked that role play. I thought that was really, really interesting. An interesting dynamic that I didn't intend to go down, so that's pretty cool. Sharon.
I could see us when we were also talking about serious things like,
Mm-hmm.
just governance. You were talking about governance, and it was all very structurally, and there was no input from the artistic side and how we can make sure everyone gets heard and all the agency for the I'm assuming we have all sorts of minorities on board in some sort of representative fashion, and,
Mm-hmm.
and none of that was there.
Excellent. Sharon, things that worked for you, things that didn't work as well for you, and how can we support your character next time?
Things that worked, it was interesting, some of the, like really this kind of genuine realization of, wait a second, how are we going to make decisions on board? And it was like, wait a second, like, whoa, how that was, and kind of realizing just how much thought would need to go into before we left. That was just like, wow. Things I would like more, I would love to get into more of the emotional stuff between people, like especially Terry, you and I. But like, it wasn't a place for it.
Yeah.
We were chat a little bit, but it's like I feel like I like the idea of the dinner thing, because I think that will allow more of because she Adria also has this kind of role as a sounding board and as somebody who's kind of available to help people process emotions. and so to be in that place of it
Mm-hmm.
would be to have people kind of feed that to me or give me opportunities. Um, when Marshall, when you stormed out, I actually sent you a PM saying, "Do you want to go anywhere with this emotionally when you get back?"
Ah, damn.
And you at this person saying, "What do you want to do with this?" And
I'm bad at balancing Discord and game.
yeah, no,
That's
that's
okay.
kind of like because I was like, "Gee, we could get into a big thing about it," but I didn't know. So to try to figure out how we can do that, and maybe the answer is, I don't know. We have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the Discord thing, I like, as a GM, I'm loving the Discord thing. As an emotional safety tool, it's like everything. Like, if we had run into trouble, like, if we'd gone more down the path of hate about the creative stuff, like, Jody Lee, I would have been checking in with you. Like, are you okay with, role playing this? Because I felt like I was laying it on kind of strong. And if I'd gone any further with
so
it.
bad when I laughed.
Yeah. Yeah, so, like,
Bastard.
yeah.
At the very beginning, when I said who I was, and both you and Kathleen laughed. So, wait, what is funny about this? But we were already on to the next thing, and I thought, boy, am I going to just uncover that again.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
But you also have to admire Maximilian here. He's our brand new rescue kitty.
hello, kitty.
We fed him like 5 days.
Oh, very cute. So, as far as like Discord goes, I did find that it broke immersion, which is annoying. But my perspective on that's weird because I'm a GM and I'm sort of supposed to have a little bit of removal since I'm trying to like really make sure everything stays on track. Oh my gosh! Chad just subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much for your Twitch Prime subscription. Your support makes this game affordable and doable and supports my game development. So thank you so much. You're a great friend. Thank you. So yeah, like, and that's why I need a mod in the channel, because if that had happened in the middle of the game, that did happen. Like, if someone had like dropped bits or like asked a question, like I'd look over every time the chat moved, and I was like, Nick's at work. No one's gonna answer this question. What am I gonna do? So yeah, that I will have to have a mod in. But yeah, like Discord, it was weird. It's like a necessary emotional safety thing, I think. But on the other hand, it's definitely breaks immersion. And I did achieve immersion for a few minutes here and there. I guess my last question, since we are over time, is what do you think about the Discord situation? You guys like it, not like it, only want to use it between games? What's the deal?
Well, I like it for me, because then I could do check-ins, because I know I used it for you, Chair, to make sure that you were okay with my character, like, overstepping.
Yeah, that was great.
So, it was nice. It was nice to be able to check in.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we don't have anywhere else to do that unless we try to do that within Google Hangouts itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a chat function there, but sometimes that lags. So I like it, but I know it does break character for everyone. And sometimes it's a struggle to be able to balance between both programs. So that, for me, it wasn't that bad, but it might be for others.
Even though it was one of my didn't work super well things,
Mm-hmm.
I think on net it was very valuable to have. I'm curious though, because the actual Google Hangout chat, well, theoretically that should be all in character because that's part of what's being broadcast and that helps make it a LARP. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I like is when safety discussions are public. Like, I didn't know you two chatted about that. Though I guess it's also vital to have private safety discussions, like taking someone aside.
Yeah, I see your point though, and like
I don't know.
in terms of, yeah, and let's see, it should show up. Let me see.
Yes.
That's when I saw it.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh my god, I have such a delay, but that's fine. I'm not gonna complain because the stream actually went really well today, so I'm not gonna complain at all. Like the one time I don't broadcast, yeah.
I just wanted to be able to test it while we were talking about it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. It's kind of on the small side because I have an overlay behind it. The overlay that I'm going to be using is a modified one that Adam designed me, and it'll have more room, I think, for the video. So I'm going to play with that more. The reason I'm using the overlay I have now is because I wanted the Chariot logo in there too. But yeah, we'll play with that. That could work too. I might miss it, but it's something to think about. Did anyone have anything else about Discord, Google Hangouts, anything like that before we end? All right. That sounds good. So the original plan was to do like a wrap up next time, but I think instead we want to do the dinner thing, get into some more serious topics, and then what I'm going to propose, if all of you are okay with this, is to do that next time, the dinner, and then another more serious thing, and then extend it to one more session just to do a wrap-up and an AMA with anybody who wants to come in. And that wouldn't be mandatory. I would need like 1 or 2 of you here, but that extra session wouldn't be, you know, a mandatory thing. What do you all think about that?
So I'm just making sure I've got this straight. So the one that you're talking about doing, I'm sorry, I'm coughing. So next Thursday you're talking about doing one more session, which is fine. It's actually, I think, in case anybody else cares, it's Rosh Hashanah, but at that hour of the night, it's fine.
Okay.
And then you're talking about that Thursday, the 28th, also, is when you would want to do the wrap up?
Yeah, Thursday the 28th, I think.
Okay, that works.
Okay. And I appreciate that. I just think the pace of the testing, and this is not as many hours as the full game will go, by the way, but the pace of the testing, I think we need like another session for the tech and the communication stuff, and really just to finish kind of developing where we're going with it. I'm thinking another session.
I'm in favor of that, and I also think, you know, we as alpha testers probably owe you another session, just because this needs to be played, and you need to figure out if this narrative, you know, continues to be entertaining and hold up through more than.
Or if I need more structure at certain points. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody. All right, I've kept you so long after time, so I'm going to go ahead and end now unless there's anything urgent anyone else has. All right, cool.
Everybody, fun playing with y'all.
Yeah, and do reach out with each other, role play between sessions, work on stuff, and yes. Bye.